Hello, and welcome to our next presentation. On behalf of the MIT CDOIQ Virtual Symposium, we would like to thank all of our sponsors who have continued to support the symposium during this very challenging year. Before we thank our partners, we'd like to ask that sometime during the symposium's breaks that you visit our partners' virtual booths. You can also visit the Content Hub on the MIT CDOIQ website for some great partner resources. We'd like to thank the following partners: Deloitte, Informatica, Privacy Analytics, ThoughtSpot, Fusion Alliance, KPMG, Sandal Consultants, Tamer, Elation, Ali Data, Big ID, Boomi, Caserta, Citizen, Data Kitchen, Garage, Wakira, Pylog, Click, ThoughtSpot, Eckerson, Global IDs, Snowflake, Starburst. And as I said, please make every effort to visit our partners, use the virtual passport, because without them and our partner support, the symposium could not be held. Thank you.
We hope that you have enjoyed a full day of amazing content and discussion today. We are now moving on to our last session of the day. Well, we still have a couple more days to go. I'm very pleased to announce our next speaker, Cindi Howson. Cindi is the Chief Data Strategy Officer of ThoughtSpot, and she will be talking about data-driven culture, presenting the question, is your organization a laggard or leader?
Great, thank you, Gertrude. Good morning for those of you joining from Australia. Good afternoon to those of you on the East Coast where I am based. I'm going to take you back in time. 1986, Chernobyl, one of the worst man-made disasters ever. And when you think about what happened, what was the data telling people? The first scientist on the ground at Chernobyl, it was that there was a full meltdown in progress. And what he wanted to do was tell people to evacuate. And the leader said no. 30 people died in the immediate aftermath. And an estimated 4,000 other people became ill in the weeks and years that followed with cancer. The culture that enabled this was so devastating that 1 year after Chernobyl happened, the lead scientist took his life. They never wanted to admit that they were not perfect. They never wanted the degree of transparency that a data-driven culture requires. So I'm Cindi Howson, and I have been in this space for 25 years. Many of you might have followed my work going back to the business objects days. And I look at the way some of the problems that we have had, culture and technology, remain that way. But I think we are at such a pivotal time in the data and analytics industry, and culture and technology are two key ingredients. So I want to empower you to transform your culture and your technology, potentially from a laggard to a leader. So what is the state of affairs here? I'll go through three things. One, are they two sides of the same coin? Over the last 25 years, as you followed me from BI Scorecard to Gartner, and for some of you, if this is the first time you've heard from me in the last year, I did make the bold move in joining a tech startup last year. So I think about there's culture and there's technology. And I've thought about, are they the same thing or distinct things? And a CIO recently said to me, Cindi, really, these are two sides of the same coin. So I'll talk about this. I'll go into how big is this problem? Why does it matter? And then I'll give you advice from leaders such as yourselves from around the world, best practices on how you can disrupt your culture to be more data-driven. So think about this concept. Is culture and technology two separate ingredients? Or as this one CIO said to me, if you see an outdated technology, the laggards, that's usually reflective of a complacent culture. So tell me what you think. Let me step you through this. So let's look at the technology portfolio, and you tell me, where are you on your modernization and innovation efforts? Is it more reports and dashboards, often based on the first generation technologies, business objects, Cognos, MicroStrategy? Maybe you have some Tableau or Click or Power BI, and these are not bad technologies. I've written 3 complete reference books. They were state of the art when I first got my start in BI and analytics. Is everything on premises? What's your cloud strategy? Do you have only an enterprise data warehouse? And how do you collaborate? How do the decision makers share their findings? Is it mainly through email? Maybe emailing around a PowerPoint. So on this side of the coin, what does the culture look like? Is there a lack of leadership, a lack of ownership? Now you are the CDOs. So I would say at least we have the data leadership. But where does the business stand on this? Do they buy into the idea of a data-driven business? Is there a fear of failure? Are you measured on the least cost to serve? Is there resistance to change, complacency, or not invented here syndrome? Politics and distrust. Why should we try that? We tried that before and we failed. It's not worth it. And data is hoarded in silos. You don't want somebody else looking at your data because it might present you in a bad light. So businesses fight amongst themselves, hide it and hoard scarce resources, scarce expertise. Or on the other side, are you a leader? Are you embracing what Gartner officially calls the third wave of BI and analytics disruption and innovation, augmented analytics, leveraging search and AI-driven insights? Are you already in the cloud for BI and analytics, but also for the data? And not just one enterprise data warehouse, but a data lake and maybe connected data marts, the logical data warehouse. And how is collaboration? Is it modern, like using tools like Slack or perhaps Teams? And I would venture to say, if this is your technology stack, then the culture also reflects that. There's transparency and trust. It's an innovative culture, one that embraces experimentation and collaborative, sharing resources, sharing expertise, sharing insights. People feel empowered and energized to embrace the new, and data is democratized. This is the vision, the culture, and the technology that I want you to have as the data leader in your organization. Now, the need to empower and energize everyone with data is deemed so important that Harvard Business Review actually partnered with ThoughtSpot to ask the question, how important is it to put data in the hands of the frontline workers? And of the thousands of organizations surveyed around the world, 87% said that they would be more successful if frontline workers felt empowered, and 86% said, yeah, and they need better technology insights to do that. The benefits are clear: increased revenues, improved customer service, best-in-class operating efficiencies, and improved profitability. It sounds what we all want, why we collect data at all. But the sad reality, only 20% are actually doing that. That is an unacceptable situation for the state of the industry after 25 years. So what does it take to get here? Why is this? What does a full modern stack look like? And I've listed here the best in class products for each category. And some of you, even last week on LinkedIn, we were having this debate, how many tools should you have? And I would say there's not a single best tool. It's the right tool for the right user and use case and segment. So what I don't want is overlapping capabilities. So let's take the top of the portion. Augmented analytics is the term Gartner uses, or at ThoughtSpot, we use the term search and AI-driven insights. Now, I was still at BI Scorecard back in 2014 when ThoughtSpot first briefed me. And ThoughtSpot takes a Google-like search interface on top of all the numerical data at scale and uses AI-generated insights to find the hidden patterns in the data. They were the first to market for search and AI-driven insights, and 2 years now on the Gartner Leaders Quadrant, Magic Quadrant. Others have started to imitate. So yes, Power BI has a search interface, Q&A, and they have in beta or preview, as Microsoft likes to call it, the ability to explore 2 data points and look for insights there. Quick insights, it's called. However, it's on small data. It's only on 1 gigabyte of data. And it's never against direct query. So another piece of the modern stack, look at your cloud data warehouse. Maybe historically you had Oracle or DB2 on premises, but the cloud data warehouses, Snowflake, Amazon Redshift, Google BigQuery, Azure Synapse. In fact, a Gartner analyst last year wrote a blog saying that on-premises is the new legacy for cloud data warehouses. So the ability to go from search all the way into that direct query mode in a cloud data warehouse is something that only ThoughtSpot can do. Power BI, SAP Analytics cannot do that. Look at the other components in the data science stack. Are you using products like Data Robot or Databricks or ThoughtIQ? And then this is where I would say, do you need multiple capabilities here? Look for rationalizing your portfolio within each of these categories. Now, this is my view of the modern data and analytics portfolio. It was very validating that just in May, updated for COVID. So I think some of you might think that my favorite research note that I worked on while at Gartner was the Magic Quadrant. It was not. It was actually probably the Data for Good note. But I would say my second favorite research note is this top 10 data and analytics trends. And I think this is really an important note because it tells you where you should be innovating from a non-vendor viewpoint. So it was very validating that the top trend was really about smarter, faster, more responsible AI and the decline of the dashboard. So this is really ThoughtSpot's sweet spot because we actually don't want people to spend days, weeks, months to create a beautifully formatted, parameterized dashboard. In fact, the VP of Schneider Electric said in the midst of COVID, 80 to 90% of their reports and dashboards are now useless. This is important. The agility and speed to insight matters. X Analytics is then also looking beyond just the structured data, but also looking at the semi-structured data. So text messages and voice. And this is a new partnership that we have, VoiceBase, using cloud and AI but an open, bring your favorite BI tool, ThoughtSpot, drilling down into the detailed records. Cloud is a given, but it's got to be cloud your way, and actually any way. Do you want a virtual private cloud, or do you want software as a service? And then the data and analytics worlds collide. So using that push-down processing, if you've modernized, leveraging the modern cloud data warehouses, incredibly important. So we've covered the concept of the two sides of the coin, culture and technology. How big is this problem? Well, over the years, and if you've read any of my books, I've written a number of data and analytics maturity models. And a number of organizations do these maturity models. TDWI has a great one. Infosys has a good one. I understand Wayne Eckerson has been working on a new one too. Gartner has one as well. And we often think about the 5 pillars of data and analytics maturity. So business outcomes, one of the most important ones, making sure you're not just throwing technology out there for technology's sake, but really aligning to what is the purpose of the organization, or what is the business value, the use case you're trying to optimize for. The data, of course, talent and people, upskilling here, having the right skills, the technology and processes. So oftentimes when I would think about the culture, I would have that together with the people and the talent. But in talking to hundreds of you over the last year, I've said, you know what? It's so important that I need to pull it out as a separate pillar. So culture can be from the leadership, but I also think it can be a grassroots movement. So one CIO said to me, Cindi, this lack of a data-driven culture, it's an utter failure of leadership, often starting at the CEO level. I think he's partially right. The leadership sets the tone, but culture is made up by the people and the customs and the stories that may have been built up over decades or even hundreds of years. And just as the people make it up, the people can also change it and disrupt it from the bottom. Might be harder to do, but still possible. So how important is culture? In the last year, I have literally traveled the world, from London to Frankfurt to Australia to Melbourne to Chicago to New York to Washington, D.C. to Texas, and surveyed CXOs, so sometimes digital transformation leaders, sometimes CDOs, analytics leaders. And look at this, 61% say that culture, not the technology and not the people, is the biggest barrier to becoming data-driven. And even last fall, bringing people into a room, brainstorming what are the highs and what are the lows. Culture was most often written on these flip charts. And in the last 3 and 4 months during this lockdown, so I'm based in New Jersey, one of the first states to go from full work from home, along with California. And I've done about 6, 7 roundtables with ThoughtSpot, sometimes with our partners, asking CXO leaders, still in a pandemic, when we're all trying to run faster, unlock the value of data faster, what is your main barrier? Culture, still. Why is this so hard? Sometimes it's the age of the company. So think about insurance. So here, the CDO of the Hartford, Sully McConnell, such a visionary chief data officer. I think many of you in the insurance industry have probably worked with him. Somebody I've known for close to 15, 17 years now. But on the Data Chief podcast, we spoke about the challenges of trying to move a 200-year-old company to the cloud and disrupt the culture. So we talked about the age, because of the age of the company, they understand risk really well. But the hard thing is trying to drive culture change, but they're committed to doing it. This is one of the bright spots. There can be a dark side to culture. And sometimes I feel bad. I've been picking on Wells Fargo for about 3 years now. But I'll also tell you, I've been a loyal customer of Wells Fargo for about 20. They have my credit card, they have my mortgage, whatever I have, they have my money. And I never experienced the dark side of people opening fake accounts. But this is what happened. So in a high pressure sales force, if a team was told you're not making your quota, they opened fake accounts. The result, $3 billion in fines, change of leadership. And I think what's happened then, even just a few months ago, they said, yeah, the culture still has not changed. Let's go a little closer to home. What if leadership doesn't even believe in the value of data? So the New York Giants, my backyard, the Giants general manager, Dave Gettleman, after another disastrous season last year, said, okay, yeah, we'll start to use data and analytics. I just hired a couple computer guys. And the press made such fun of this. They said he actually uses an abacus to categorize and score the good players. And I'm not sure if they were totally joking. These are the challenges, real challenges, but there's bright spots. So Medtronic, I love Medtronic, medical device manufacturer. They make things like implants, but they also make the ventilators. And think about what kind of culture does it take in a pandemic for a company to open up the IP and share the plans, open source the ventilator plans so that others can manufacture it, because that's what you do in a pandemic. Or Verizon. So even though Verizon's revenues are down 5% from the latest reported quarterly earnings, and 1.5 million customers are late with their payments, taking advantage of this grace period that you don't have to pay your bill if you've been impacted by work, laid off. Even despite this, Verizon is investing in training for 20,000 employees, upskilling 20,000 employees that otherwise would have been idle. This is the power of a positive culture, the right culture. Some other best practices, case studies, and data and analytics that are often spoken about, written about from around the world. Now, some of these are digital natives, Amazon, Airbnb, but you also have, for example, Capital one of the first banks to go all in on the cloud, or even Walmart, originally only having a physical store presence, having to pivot faster to online, unlocking the value of data. So a few examples. Now, how can you transform your culture? The soft stuff is the harder stuff. 5 things you can do. Bring in a change agent, incentivize innovation, confront the brutal facts, identify the with them, and organize for collaboration. What does that mean? The change agent, it starts with you. The CDO is often the change agent. And I said at the start of the year, a prediction that I thought we would see about a 25% churn rate in the role of the CDO, because the CDO also has been likened to Sisyphus. You're caught in the middle. One step forward, somebody pushes back. And yet I also see these change agents, your serial innovators. Once you've had success somewhere, you're ready to move on to the next problem and disrupt elsewhere. Sometimes the change agent can come from another group within a company. So for example, one organization I work with, somebody in finance kept complaining about how poor the data was, couldn't get to the insights. So they made this person the VP of Business Analytics. The other thing to think about is, how do you approach innovation? Do you approach it at all? And if there's a shadow IT group, do you shut that down, resent it, not invent it here? Or do you have a model of failing fast? And I like the CDO of Just Eat, Alberto. He likes to do a hackathon. Are you ready for this? Every quarter. Or the CIO of Avnet, Max Chan, talks about how he pulls people together in a rapid innovation team, lets them work on a particular problem for 12 weeks, and then they look, do they productionize it or do they kill it? So failures are celebrated, but there's an innovation mindset. The ability to confront the brutal facts. So what do you do? What culture do you enable when the numbers paint a bad picture? Whether it's something like Wells Fargo or customer churn, or the COVID data, a situation unfolding in Florida where there's 2 sets of books right now. Or if claims processing is too slow, do you hide it or do you fake it until the numbers look good? One of my customers calls this vanity metrics. The other aspect I talk about is WIFM. What is in it for me? And this is really about flipping the equation from what data do I need to what problems can be solved using data. So if you think, for example, universal example, a financial advisor, you might say, what's their WIFM? Increasing commissions. But is it really? Is it maybe helping ensure that student loan for their client could be paid off? Or that the retirement planning will let you have your dream retirement home or enough to retire at all? Or for teachers, what's the WIFM? It's making sure the students can succeed. And so that requires a very different approach to how we build data and analytics systems. It requires a collaborative approach, and one where we look at the people change management required. We keep throwing more technology out there and not paying enough attention to the change required. In fact, from the Harvard Business Review survey, they found that 44% say that no accounting of change management is the biggest barrier. Also, looking at this, that might require new people, new skills, upskilling, and new ways of organizing around data and analytics. So rather than going from that report order taker, building to a specification, somebody who's more risk averse, it's really looking for people that have critical thinking, willing to communicate, actively listen, and apply design thinking. So this, you're either going to have to upskill or bring in new talent, focusing on data storytelling and diversity of thought, combining the business people with the technical people, and maybe the coders with the people that studied philosophy or even English. Now, how do you organize these people? There is not one single best organizational model. But in talking to hundreds of customers over the years, I think the best one and the most impactful one you see in the top bar, according to McKinsey, the biggest bar for analytics leaders is the one that has data and analytics embedded inside every business unit with some degree of centralization. So what does that look like? So ideally, the CDO is reporting to the CEO, but then within each line of business, you're going to have experts, maybe a dashboard author, a data engineer, a data storyteller, but with a dotted line back to the CDO for skills development and for career management. And maybe that dashboard author, if you modernize your technology, we can replace with the analyst of the future, who's more an insight optimizer. And you replicate that model across the organization, each business unit and functional area. So those are 5 things, 5 ways you could disrupt your culture. And we've heard this all day today. The panels have been phenomenal. I love this quote from Verizon, Jeff Noto, the SVP of Business Analytics. As hard as COVID has been, the need for fast insights has never been greater. And this is our time for maximum impact. To the extent we can be nimble, we can be positioned to accelerate the adoption of data-driven analytics. So my hope, as we wrap up today, is you look at these 2 sides of the coin. My hope for you is that you'll have this collaborative, innovative, fail-fast culture with empowerment and with modern technology. And I'll share with you these coins that you might have seen on Twitter. This was my first gift, a project 25 years ago from my first BI and Analytics program manager. And he gave us a silver dollar for every 100 users he onboarded, so that we would stay focused on the user, empowering the decision maker. With that, I'll say thank you, and I'll open it up for questions.
Cindi, very good. This is Peter. Thank you so much. There are a couple of questions. One is, what methodologies for culture shift and leadership improvement do you recommend, or do you have your own? It would be my question.
I think you first have to look at what is the problem within the culture. So take a baseline. Is it lack of leadership? Is it resistance to change? Is it lack of alignment to incentives that enable that fail fast? So starting with a baseline, identifying the blockers, and then putting together a path forward.
Okay, good. Let's see, slowly moving the organization with a lot of resistance to being a question-driven company and having analysts doing analysis, not just reporting. I don't know that that's a question or an observation.
Yeah, so again, the industry has been built up over years. And I think what's hard is because the technology used to be hard, there's a comfort in spoon feeding people reports, but that's not state of the art. And there's no way to keep up with that pace of change. Right.
And the last one was, how do you handle organizational change with legacy systems owners?
Yes, so recognize that nobody made a bad decision. It's more that what was state of the art at that point in time has become outdated. Think of like your landline phone. That was state of the art at one point in time. But at some point you have to say, when do we put that into maintenance mode? And when do we innovate in the new? And get them excited about the new, doing more with less and better.
Okay, great. Well, that's it. Any wrap-up thoughts? We've got a couple of minutes left.
Yes, so 3 actions. I want the CDOs, I want you to think about what's the one thing you will do when you get back to really light a fire under your teams to innovate and disrupt the culture. Give them the permission to lead in this very challenging time. I'll also ask that if you have time, come by the ThoughtSpot virtual booth tomorrow. And then if you're looking for more ideas and inspiration, I have been blessed by the willingness of these visionary CDOs from around the world to share their insights, their failures, and their journey on the Data Chief podcast. So have a listen. Thank you.
Thank you so much.